The morning sun broke over the Manhattan skyline, casting a golden glow on the bustling streets below. Despite the cold December air, the city was alive with energy, cab horns blaring, subway doors clanging, and the hum of early Christmas shoppers filling the sidewalks. For the past few months, the economic landscape had been a hot topic, with rising prices squeezing American households. At the center of this economic storm sat Donald Trump, the sitting president of the United States. Known for his bold claims and unapologetic style, Trump had made economic recovery a cornerstone of his presidency. But with grocery prices hitting record highs, many Americans felt the pinch, and the media had not missed a chance to amplify their voices. It was against this backdrop that Trump's team scheduled a surprise visit to the iconic Hudson Market, a staple of the New York community for over 50 years. His advisors believed it would be a perfect opportunity to show the president in touch with the everyday struggles of Americans, a powerful image ahead of the upcoming midterms. As the presidential motorcade pulled up to the corner of 57th Street and 8th Avenue, the Secret Service moved swiftly, securing the area. Shoppers stopped in their tracks, phones held high to capture the unexpected spectacle. Trump emerged from his armored SUV, his signature red tie catching the morning light. The president, flanked by his aides, approached the market entrance. Flashbulbs popped as he paused to wave at a group of tourists huddled across the street. As he crossed the threshold into the market, the warm, familiar smell of fresh bread and roasted coffee mixed with the sharp tang of disinfectant hit him, a reminder of the countless small businesses that defined America's spirit. Behind the checkout counters, staff members in green aprons exchanged nervous glances. The store's manager, a burly man in his mid-40s named Mike, felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had watched the news, felt the sting of rising costs firsthand, and had no patience for what he feared would be a carefully staged political stunt. Trump approached a display of fresh produce, pausing beside a towering pyramid of crisp Washington apples. "Beautiful, just beautiful," he said, plucking a bright red apple from the pile. "The best apples. The best. Made in America." He turned, flashing a grin at a nearby cameraman. As Trump moved deeper into the store, his aides whispered to staff, encouraging them to smile and engage. But the atmosphere remained tense, the usual hum of the checkout lines replaced by an uneasy silence. Finally, Trump stopped beside the butcher counter where a middle-aged woman with graying hair and a hardened expression was busy wrapping a slab of steak for a customer. Sensing an opportunity, Trump leaned in, his voice booming. "Hey, sweetheart, mind if I get a quick photo? Great store you have here." The woman, whose name tag read Linda, straightened, her eyes locking onto Trump's with a defiant spark. "Actually, Mr. President," she replied, her voice cutting through the air like the cleaver in her hand, "I'd rather not. With these prices, I can't afford the time." A hush fell over the store. For a moment, even the steady hum of the overhead fluorescent lights seemed to pause. Trump blinked, caught off guard, his confident grin slipping for the briefest moment. Trump's eyes narrowed, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as the sharp words hung in the air. He wasn't used to this kind of pushback, especially in front of the cameras. For a man known for his quick comebacks and commanding presence, the unexpected rebuff left him momentarily speechless. Behind him, one of his aides, a young woman named Rachel, shot a panicked glance at the press pool. She could see the reporters leaning in, fingers poised over their record buttons, the moment ripe for a headline. Trump, sensing the tension, quickly recovered, leaning into his trademark grin. "Come on, Linda," he said, his voice a notch louder, hoping to regain control of the moment. "You know, we're doing a lot, to bring these prices down. The economy's never been better, and it's only going to get stronger." Linda didn't flinch. Her grip on the steel counter tightened, her knuckles white beneath the thin latex gloves. She had been working at Hudson Market for over 20 years, supporting 2 kids through college, often clocking double shifts just to make ends meet. She had seen every type of customer, the rushed, the kind, the entitled, but never a sitting U.S. president. "I'm sorry, Mr. President," Linda replied, her voice steady despite the tremble she felt in her legs. "But I have customers to serve. Some of us don't have time for photo ops." A low murmur rippled through the store, customers peering around towering stacks of cereal boxes and freshly misted lettuce. A nearby shelf stalker, a wiry kid in his early 20s, let out a low whistle, barely masking his grin. Trump's face stiffened, the warmth in his eyes hardening into something colder, more calculating. He looked past Linda, his gaze sweeping over the row of checkout counters where cashiers stood frozen, wide-eyed and uncertain. Rachel stepped forward, her nerves crackling beneath her crisp blazer. She whispered into Trump's ear. her words lost in the chaos of the bustling market. He nodded, his jaw tightening, and turned back to Linda. "All right, I get it," Trump said, stepping back with a forced chuckle. "You're a hard worker. That's the American spirit, hard work. Grit. I respect that." He raised his voice, projecting to the entire store now, as if to drown out the uncomfortable moment. "That's why I'm fighting for lower prices. For people like you." Linda said nothing, turning back to the slab of beef on the counter, her knife slicing through the muscle with mechanical precision. The cameras continued to click, capturing the moment from every angle. As Trump moved down the aisle, his entourage trailing like nervous shadows, the tension lingered. He paused near the dairy section, eyes falling on the price tag for a gallon of milk, $6.49, almost double what it had been just a year ago. For the first time in a long while, he felt the weight of the decisions that had led to this point, the complicated tangle of global markets and political battles that had driven up costs. Rachel's voice crackled through his earpiece. "We should move on, sir. Maybe a visit to the bakery? Less direct confrontation." Trump forced a smile, straightening his tie as he continued down the aisle, the clinking of glass bottles and the muffled chatter of shoppers filling the air behind him. Back at the butcher counter, Linda watched him go, her heart pounding. She knew her moment of defiance would likely be forgotten by tomorrow's news cycle, drowned out by 1,000 other stories. But in that brief, electric moment, she had felt something she hadn't in a long time, the quiet, powerful thrill of speaking truth to power. As Trump reached the bakery section, the air grew warmer, filled with the comforting sense of freshly baked bread and sugar-dusted pastries. An elderly woman in a blue cardigan adjusting the rows of baguettes glanced up as the president approached. Unlike the tense scene at the butcher counter, a few of the bakery staff managed polite, if somewhat cautious, smiles. Trump, keen to reset the tone, picked up a plump croissant from the front display, turning it over in his hands as if inspecting it for flaws. "Beautiful work," he said, his voice carrying a touch of the familiar bravado. "American craftsmanship at its finest." The baker, a tall man with a flour-dusted apron and a thick New York accent, gave a nod. "Thanks, Mr. President. Been doing this for 30 years. Some things don't change." Trump seized on the line. "Exactly. Tradition. Hard work. It's what makes this country great." He turned to the nearby cameras, hoping to steer the narrative back into friendly territory. But before he could continue, a soft but firm voice cut through the air. "Prices change, though," said a petite, sharp-eyed woman stacking trays of cookies nearby. Her name tag read Maria. "My flour costs have doubled in the last year. Same with butter. Eggs? Don't even get me started." Trump paused, the croissant still in his hand. For a moment, he considered brushing off the comment, but the steady gaze of the small crowd forming around the bakery counter held him in place. Maria set down the tray she was carrying, brushing her hands on her apron. "We used to sell these for $1.50 each. Now they're $3, and even then, our margins are thin. People come in less often, and when they do, they buy less. It's hard." Trump met her eyes, the weight of her words sinking in. He knew the economy was a battleground, a complex web of policies, global trade, and financial markets. But here, in this modest corner of a Manhattan market, it felt far more personal, more human. "I hear you, Maria," Trump said, setting the croissant back on the tray. "Believe me, we're working on it. We're cutting regulations, bringing jobs back, and fighting to lower these prices." Maria crossed her arms, her brow furrowing. "With all due respect, Mr. President, it's not just about jobs. It's about the cost of living. My rent's gone up, utilities are up, and now groceries, too. My paycheck feels smaller every month." Trump glanced around, the cameras still rolling, capturing every 10th second. He could feel the eyes of his aides on him, their silent pleas for him to pivot to regain control of the situation. He forced another smile, nodding slowly. "I understand. And that's why I'm here, to listen, to see for myself, and to make changes." Maria said nothing, her expression unchanging, the quiet strength in her eyes a stark contrast to the polished optimism Trump had hoped to project. Rachel, the young aide, stepped forward, her voice low but firm. "Mr. President, perhaps we should move to the produce section. A little more camera-friendly." Trump hesitated, his grip tightening around the croissant for a brief moment before setting it down with a soft thud. He gave Maria a tight nod and turned, his shoulders slightly stiff as he moved on, the cameras and his team in tow. As he rounded the corner into the produce aisle, the voices of the bakery staff rose behind him, their low murmurs blending with the distant clatter of a shopping cart. Maria watched him go, a tightness in her chest slowly easing. She had said her piece, however small, and in that moment it felt like a victory. Trump moved into the produce section, his polished shoes clicking softly against the tiled floor as he navigated the narrow aisles lined with neatly stacked fruits and vegetables. The vibrant colors, deep green kale, bright yellow bananas, and crisp orange carrots, contrasted sharply with the tense atmosphere that now clung to his entourage. A few feet ahead, a young man in his mid-20s was restocking a row of bell peppers, his hands moving quickly but with a practiced precision. His name tag read Jamal, and he had the wiry frame of someone used to long shifts on his feet. As Trump approached, Jamal's eyes flicked up briefly before returning to his work, his jaw tightening. Trump paused beside a pyramid of avocados, their dark, textured skins gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He plucked one from the stack, turning it in his hand. You know, they say these things are great for your health. Full of those, good fats. Fantastic for energy. Jamal didn't look up, his hands still busy arranging the peppers. Trump, sensing another opportunity for a candid moment, leaned in. Hey son, what's your name? Trump asked, his voice carrying the familiar tone of a campaign rally. Jamal straightened, brushing his hands against his apron before meeting Trump's gaze. Jamal, sir? Jamal. Strong name. You like working here? Trump asked, his grin broadening, clearly hoping for a positive, camera-friendly soundbite. Jamal hesitated, glancing past Trump to where a small group of customers had gathered, their eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. He took a slow breath, feeling the weight of his words before responding. It's a job, sir, he replied, his voice steady but tinged with a quiet defiance. Helps pay the bills, keep the lights on. But it's getting tougher. Prices are up, rent's up. Seems like every time I get my paycheck, it's already gone. Trump's smile faltered slightly, the familiar words hitting a nerve he had tried to ignore. He nodded slowly, setting the avocado back on the pile. I get it, Jamal. I really do. That's why we're working hard to bring those costs down, cut regulations, boost American jobs, Trump said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Believe me, we're going to fix this. Jamal's eyes flicked to the price tag above the avocados, $2.99 each, nearly double what they had cost just a year ago. He felt a sudden, sharp anger rising in his chest, the kind that came from months of stretched paychecks and rising rent notices. With respect, sir, Jamal replied, his voice low but firm, it doesn't feel like it's getting fixed. Feels like it's getting worse. My mom's working 2 jobs now just to keep us from falling behind. We're not living, we're surviving. Trump blinked, the sharpness of Jamal's words cutting through the polished, controlled narrative his team had hoped to craft. For a moment, the only sounds were the soft rustle of plastic produce bags and the distant beeping of a cash register. Rachel, hovering just behind Trump, shifted uncomfortably, her fingers wrapped tightly around the corner of her clipboard. She met Trump's eyes, a silent plea to move on, to find a more favorable interaction. Trump forced a tight smile, giving Jamal a stiff nod. All right. I hear you. I hear you, and we're going to make it right. Just hang in there, okay? Jamal gave a slow nod, his expression unreadable as he turned back to the bell peppers, his hands moving quickly, the muscles in his forearms taut. Trump straightened, adjusting his jacket before turning away, the cameras still rolling as he moved toward the checkout lanes. As he walked away, Jamal felt a strange, hollow satisfaction, the kind that came not from victory but from the simple act of being heard, however briefly, in a world that often ignored the voices of those on the lower rungs of the economic ladder. As Trump approached the checkout lanes, the tension in the air seemed to thicken, the fluorescent lights casting sharp shadows on the polished tiles below. Shoppers had begun to whisper among themselves, their phones discreetly capturing every movement, every forced smile. He paused beside Register 3, where a young mother was struggling to keep her toddler calm while unloading a cart full of groceries, diapers, baby formula, a few packs of ground beef, and some canned vegetables. Her eyes flicked up as Trump stopped beside her, his imposing frame casting a long shadow over her cart. Beautiful baby, Trump said, nodding toward the restless child whose small fists were clenched around the handle of the cart. How old? 17 months, the woman replied, her voice tinged with the fatigue of countless sleepless nights. She managed a weak smile, adjusting the strap of her diaper bag as her son began to fuss, his small face scrunching in frustration. Wonderful age, Trump said, leaning in slightly. Believe me, I know. Beautiful years. They grow up so fast. The woman's smile faltered as she swiped her card through the reader, the digital display flashing a total that made her heart sink. $189.47. She winced. biting her lower lip as she mentally calculated the impact on her tight weekly budget. Trump, perhaps sensing the discomfort, straightened, his tone shifting to a more practiced, campaign-ready cadence. You know, we're working hard to bring these prices down. It's all part of making America great again. Keeping families strong, businesses thriving. The woman forced another tight smile, her eyes dropping to the receipt in her hand. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the cashier, a tall, thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a weary expression, chimed in. His name tag read Alex, and his voice carried the tired but determined tone of someone who had seen too many double shifts. With all due respect, Mr. President, Alex said, his fingers still moving swiftly over the register keys, these prices have gone up faster than my paycheck. People are struggling, really struggling. Trump's eyes narrowed slightly, the muscle in his jaw tightening. He glanced at the camera crew, their lenses trained on the unfolding scene, the quiet murmur of the nearby customers growing louder. I get it, Trump replied, his tone sharper now. But we're fighting for this, for all of this. It's not easy, but we're making progress. Alex shook his head, his hands pausing on the stack of crumpled bills beside the register. Maybe. But when I'm choosing between groceries and my electric bill, it doesn't feel like progress. The woman beside him, now cradling her restless toddler, gave a slow, reluctant nod, her eyes not meeting Trump's as she stuffed the receipt into her purse. Trump forced another smile, his fingers tightening around the polished marble countertop. He glanced back at his aides, their tense, silent stares pushing him to move on, to find a more favorable narrative. All right, Trump said, his voice hardening. We'll fix it. Just you wait. America's coming back stronger than ever. With that, he turned sharply, his polished shoes clicking against the tiles as he headed for the exit, his entourage scrambling to keep pace. As the glass doors swung shut behind him, a strange, heavy silence settled over the store, the hum of the fluorescent lights filling the void. Alex exhaled slowly, his fingers returning to the register, the quiet clink of coins a small, defiant echo against the backdrop of a changing America. Outside, Trump climbed back into his armored SUV, the distant blare of a car horn echoing through the busy Manhattan streets as the motorcade pulled away, the glowing red tail lights disappearing into the gray morning mist. Back in the store, Linda, Maria, Jamal, and Alex returned to their stations, their brief, uncomfortable brushes with power already fading into the long, grinding hours of their daily lives. For them, the struggle would continue, the small, unglamorous battles that defined the real America, far from the bright lights of the campaign trail.